Vakhturi, who lectures at the Institute of World Politics and is also an energy consultant. Thank you for speaking to us here at BBC News. Just first off, tell us more about the significance of these two targets.
Well, Saudi Arabia is one of the largest producer and exporter of crude oil, and the only country that has a spare capacity for the event of interruption in the supply. And the target was in the heart of Saudi Arabia's production, where is the largest crude oil processing facility before the export, which not only could have an impact and had already on its production, but on its spare capacity.
We've been talking about the impact it's had on the markets. I mean, what can we see and how is it going to affect us at the pumps, the petrol pumps?
When the market was lucky that the incident happened on Friday, so it had 2 days of having more witness and decide more carefully and rationally about the prices. If the market was open and if this was happening during the week, obviously it was going to have a harder and more significant impact on the market due to uncertainty. What we do expect is that we do not expect a big shock in the market on the prices on the market, because as of now, market is well supplied. Saudi Arabia currently has enough inventories domestically to cover for its 5.7 million barrels per day of oil production suspensions for about 30 days. The Kingdom, Saudi Aramco, also has inventories around the world, in Japan, in Sokhna in Egypt, and also in Rotterdam in Europe. This is also along with the inventories that US, China, and EU are holding. So the market is not going to have a supply shock, and we don't expect to have a shock on the prices. Nevertheless, we expect that the prices would raise, but the increase in the prices would be because of the premiums affiliated and involved with the uncertainty risk, because the market is not sure that for how long the Saudi production is going to be suspended and how fast it can come back online. And also the risk premiums involved with geopolitical sentiments of the market, that the worries that potentially such attacks and interruption could happen more often in the future.
Okay, you're talking there about a lot of risks and forecasting. What does this then tell you about the vulnerability of the region itself?
Well, I would like to speak about Saudi Arabia first. Despite its proximity to Iran and the geopolitical status now, Saudi Arabia still has a high resiliency as a reliable supply source in the market. The reason for that is that Saudi Arabia during the past decades has had a significant investment in infrastructure and alternative supply infrastructures and facilities inside the kingdom and outside. So in incidents such this, there are possibilities for Saudi Arabia through its infrastructure around the world and domestically to somehow offset the interruption due to the targets. Nevertheless, the situation in the neighborhood, in the region, is so tense and vulnerable that the sentiment and the risks involved with any further targets and attack on facilities or tankers, or any issue that could interrupt the supply flow from the region to the world is really high.
Professor Vakhturi, we understand that President Trump had a phone call with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, saying that Washington was ready to work with the kingdom to guarantee its security. This came via a White House statement. Does that calm fears or raise the risk of an escalation? How does that help?
Well, obviously, if we in the market, as a market watchers, we want to look for certainty, engaging Iran in a more constructive dialogue in a global sphere would obviously bring more calm and peace to the market. Rather than that, such claims and threats might increase the risk of further targets, further vulnerability, and risks of supply interruption. So the more we move through a direct threat toward Iran, the market expects more uncertainty and more vulnerability and risks for the supply flow. Whereas the more the market senses that the U.S. and global community are engaging Iran in a more peaceful and constructive dialogue, the risks are decreasing naturally.
Professor Sara Vakhturi, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Okay, time to catch up with the weather. Here's Lucy Martin.